Hello and welcome to workshop video number 5, which is the Bible study simulation video. Now, if I was you, I'd get a comfortable chair, get a notepad and pen, and a Bible if you need one. You should really, I think it would be a good idea if you have a Bible if you have one. If not, look online and obviously get an online Bible. This is going to be quite a lengthy video, so I just really want you to get comfortable. You could pause it and come back to it, but it's good if you run through the whole thing at once and take notes as you're going along. So if you want to pause it at this point in time so you can get yourself a comfortable chair, a notepad and pen to take notes because you'll need them. Okay. So why do we need to study the Bible? Scripture tells us to understand, to know about God. Okay. Types of Bible study. There's private study. Okay. And there's corporate study. During this Bible study simulation, I intend to cover private study. You can actually compare studying the Bible to your prayer life. You have private prayer life and you have a corporate prayer life. There's this duality concept which seems to be common in the practical study and communication with God. You can observe. The benefits of private study: acquiring your own personal understanding, development of your personal relationship with God, development of patience and concentration, transference of study skills, become more effective in life. Example, preacher, church member interaction. It's the duty of every Christian to protect the word of God from apostasy, agnostics and apologetics. If you do not understand or know the word, how can you do this? Let's go through some basic definitions now. For those of you who don't know what an agnostic is, it's a person who believes that nothing is known or can be known of the existence or nature of God. Okay. Apostasy means abandonment or renunciation of a belief or principle. And apologetics, reassured arguments in justification of a theory or doctrine. When participating in corporate study, it's more effective and proactive, okay, instead of passively just accepting everything you hear. Okay, so that's one of the benefits, okay, of private study. And it's enjoyable. The word becomes more alive and interesting. You obtain a sense of worth by being able to contribute. Benefits of corporate study now, you get a broader perspective of others' interpretation of the word. And this could be due to the level of vocabulary or education or personal experiences. Encourages you to strive to become better, improve, realize you can become better with practice. It equips you better for evangelism, encourages leaders to evolve as confidence builds. Okay, now for the tools of Bible study. First of all, you need a Bible. Okay, I tend to use about 4 Bibles. Okay, I use the English Standard Version, which is this one here. Okay, the King James Version, which I can tell you it is the King James Version, so it's so tatty and old, but I've really used it quite a lot, the King James Version. The Amplified Bible. And the NIV. And again, I've used it so much it's kind of warm, but take it from me, this is the NIV study Bible. Okay, so that's the first thing you need. A Bible dictionary. And I've got this one here. It's a very concise one, and it's an Oxford one. And the difference between, say, a Bible dictionary and, say, an ordinary dictionary, this is the Oxford Dictionary. Okay, as well. Sorry, yes, it is an Oxford Dictionary. Is that the Bible dictionary tends to relate words specifically to biblical texture in terms of the definition as to how a word's used within the Bible rather than how it is used in everyday language, whereas obviously the ordinary dictionary does just define a word as it means in English in everyday usage. Okay. Next, you need a concordance. Okay. And I've got the New Strong's Concordance. Okay. So these are the tools you need. Strong's Concordance. Okay. And finally, a commentary, a Bible commentary. Okay. Now, first of all, let me explain what a concordance is. The Bible concordance is a list of every single word that appears in the Bible, the number of times it appears in the Bible, and where it appears in the Bible. So you can actually get a chapter, book, and verse reference for where that word occurs. Okay, and that is very good for understanding more in terms of elaborating on, say, a Bible dictionary and what a word really means and the meaning of it and how it's supposed to be used. The Bible commentary now is like once you've read something and you might not understand the practical implications of it, or historical factors or situations that were going on at the time, it gives you a general overview of a specific verse, chapter, or a book to aid your understanding. And it's generally a summary of what it is, and it's laid out literally in the format of the chapters of the Bible and the verses of the Bible. However, it's not written with the exact verses, but just an explanation of the verses. Okay, so that's the tools that you need for study. Okay, so in this Bible study simulation, the chapter I've chosen, or book I've chosen, the book and the chapter I've chosen to study is the Psalm 1. Okay, why did I choose this? Okay, first of all, it's short but long enough to give a good example of how a chapter of the Bible can be observed. This psalm summarizes God's relationship, covenant, and expectations of his people. So I'd like you to turn to your Bibles now and read with me Psalm 1. Okay. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He's like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and his leaf does not wither. In all that he does he prospers. The wicked do not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Amen. Lord, may your words be a lamp to our feet and a light to our pathway. And as I study this, or I go through this assimilation, I pray that much will be revealed so you can understand generally what you can observe just from that psalm. Okay, so how would you begin? You look at a psalm like that, you look at any part of the Bible, and the first way, and another book actually very quickly before I start, which is going to be very, very useful, is the pattern and format reading, which is what I follow in order to aid in study, is a book which is entitled The New Joy of Discovery in Bible Study, and it's written by Lita Wald. Okay, so you can actually get it. It's inexpensive. It costs about just over $10, about £7 in British money, and it's very, very effective. It really is. It's very good at outlining as a guideline as to where to begin. Okay, so as I said, back to the psalm. Okay, verse we're observing just keywords. Okay, and in this actual passage, psalm, the key words I picked up were blessed, counsel, wicked, scoffers, law, Lord, meditates, tree, water, yield, fruit, season, leaf, wither, prospers, chaff, judgment, righteous, congregation, perish, walks, stands, sinners, sits, delight, planted, desire, habitually. Okay. You then proceed to define each word. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through every single definition of every single word, although I have written them down here and they will be available on the notes, which you will be able to obtain on the newsletter. Okay, the next newsletter that you get following the one that you're going to have on the 24th of May. But yeah, the key ones, or the ones that I've defined here, for instance, wicked, evil or morally wrong, playfully mischievous, excellent, wonderful. Excellent, wonderful. Okay. And the Bible Dictionary says both Old Testament and New Testament anticipate certain punishment for the wicked. Okay. It says Psalm 9:14, it quotes Matthew 13:49. It was a constant puzzle that the wicked prospered. It says, and frequently there is the refrain that sooner or later they will be punished. Wickedness is a deep-seated evil in the heart. Okay. Scoffers, people who speak about something in a scornfully derisive way, an expression of scornful derision, an object of ridicule. Law, a rule or system of rules recognised by a country or community as regulating the actions of its members and enforced by the impositions of penalties. Such rules as a subject of study was the basis of the legal profession. And the Bible Dictionary goes on further to say, translation of the Hebrew Torah. Though this word has a meaning much wider than the legal interpretation might be preferable, it is used in the Hebrew Bible for the Pentateuch, in which law as a system of commands occupies only a part of the 5 books. Law, in the narrowest sense, was the basis for the administration of justice, which was done by local elders at the city gate. Though difficult cases were referred to the temple authorities at Jerusalem, the king exercised judicial functions and his judgments created precedents. Lord, a man of noble rank or high office, a name of God or Christ. The Bible Dictionary says used in both Old Testament and New Testament as addressing Moses as leader. Okay. And one more, righteous. Define. Morally right or justifiable, very good, excellent, correctly, so-called, genuine. If you notice, if you compared it to the wicked, now that there was another colloquial definition for wicked, which was excellently good, which obviously, you know, you can see why the biblical dictionaries kind of like more, in a sense, literal to what the meaning of a word is, rather than what an everyday word or everyday definition or usage of a word is. The Bible Dictionary then goes on to say righteousness, in Hebrew, the quality of being found right or innocent. It is what describes a good king or a fair partner or neighbour. God is righteous because he observes his covenant, delivering Israel from enemies and offering hope for the future. In the New Testament, the word righteous occurs frequently in Matthew, where it means ethical righteousness, doing the will of God, which is less radical than what is written by Paul, who asserted that righteousness is not only right conduct before God, but a right relationship with God. The initiative is from God. It is received in faith. It issues in right conduct. Righteousness is ascribed to Jesus in 1 John 2:1 in the sense of a total conformity to the will of God. Okay, so that's a brief briefly going over the definitions there. Next, we observe the advice, admonitions and warnings of the psalm. First of all, verse 1, blessed, imperative verb there. Walk not, the ones that walk not, advice, walk not or stand not or sit not. Okay, the advice in verse 2, but delight in and meditate on. The warning is the wicked in verse 4. Okay, verse 5, the wicked will not stand. Okay, and the verse 6, but way of the wicked will perish. Okay. Next, reasons and results. A reason. Verse 1. Counsel with wicked, walk and adopt sinful ways, sit with scoffers. That's the reason. And the result is verse 4. Like chaff, they won't remain. Okay. They will not stand in the judgment, the congregation of the righteous. And verse 6. But the way of the wicked will perish. Reason. Verse 1. Not counsel with wicked, not walk in the sinful ways, not sit with scoffers. Verse 2. Delight in law of the Lord and meditates. Result, verse 1, blessed. Verse 3, like a tree. Verse 4, he will not stand in judgment, but found just and will in the congregation of the righteous. Okay, and verse 6, for the Lord knows. In other words, his protection. He watches over. Contrast, comparisons and illustrations. First of all, righteous, verse 1, delight of the blessed, and verse 2, delight of the wicked is the delight of the, verse 1 is the delight of the blessed, verse 2 looks at the delight of the wicked. The comparison is verse 2, it's a simile like a tree. Okay, verse 4, contrast or comparison like a chaff. Okay, verse 5, wicked versus the sinners. Judgment, okay, the congregation of the righteous. Verse 6, Lord knows that knowledge is way of righteous, and versus the perish with the way of the wicked. Okay. Repetition and progression of ideas. The way of the righteous and the wicked. Hint. Number of times the word is repeated. Okay. Wicked is repeated 4 times. Righteous repeated twice and is implied 4 times, so a total of 6. So verse 1, blessed, looking at it from an unblessed person's activities. Verse 2, what a blessed person focuses on and concerns himself with and enjoy. Verse 3, use of a similar tree, simile tree to illustrate establishment. Verse 4, contrast, wicked, fruit, unestablished. Verse 5, result, judgment. Verse 6, reason, reward of the righteous, the Lord's protection of the righteous exclusively. Okay. Important connectives. Prepositions and conjunctions. First of all, let's define what prepositions are. It's a word governing and usually preceding a noun or pronoun and expressing a relation to another word or element, as in, she arrived after dinner and what did you do it for? So the words after and for are prepositions. So, connective definition, word or phrase linking other linguistic units. Okay, and conjunction is a word used to connect clauses or sentences or to coordinate words in the same clause, an instance of 2 or more events occurring at the same point in time or space. For instance, verse 2, but. Okay, the word but is connective. And verse 4, again, but. And verse 5, therefore. And then verse 6, for, as a reason. Grammatical constructions. Okay. When observing the grammatical construction of Psalm 1, I listed it into a column, basically first of all, word, verbs, especially broke the sentence up into word, verbs, tense, noun, pronoun, preposition, adjective, and interpretation. So under word, I put blessed. Verb was walks. Tense was present tense. Pronoun was man. Verb again, counsel. Tense, present tense, wicked. Okay. Stands, present tense. Sinners is the noun. In was the preposition. Sits, and so forth. I will let you have the notes so you can actually observe for yourself what I've written here. But my interpretation was not what you have done in the past, nor what you intend to do in the future, but what you are doing now. Established knows where they are headed, what they believe in, not all easily led, fickle-minded. Produces much return value when the time is called upon. Everything he decides to do and do it becomes a success. Final day, they will not be able to meet the basic requirements nor be included when the righteous are taken up to heaven, because the Lord know his sheep and their ways. Therefore they are protected and covered, but the way of the wicked will perish. Okay, the commas. Role of the comma is to give detail to the structure of sentences and to make their meaning clear by marking off words that either do or do not belong together. It usually represents the natural breaks and pauses that you make in speech and operates at phrase and word level. Phrase level. An important function of the comma is to present ambiguity or momentary misunderstanding. To prevent it. Word level. A comma is used to separate adjectives having the same range of references coming before a noun. A semicolon. The main role of a semicolon is to mark a grammatical separation that is stronger in effect than a comma, but less strong than a full stop. Normally, the two parts of a sentence is divided by a semicolon balance each other rather than leading from one another. Sentences which already have commas in. Okay. For example, the sentence, what has crippled me? Question mark. Was it my grandmother, comma, frowning on my childish affection and turning it to formality and cold courtesy, semicolon, or my timid, comma, fearful mother, comma, in awe of everyone including, comma, finally, comma, me, semicolon, or was it my wife's infidelities, comma, or my own, question mark. Okay. In the English Standard Version, it's fully punctuated. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, comma, nor stands in the way of sinners, comma, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, semicolon, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, comma, and on his law he meditates day and night. Okay. The but connected there. Let's see. I put that there. 1 second. Yes, I did. Okay. We see how grammatical construction is used there. Okay. Generally, to summarize, observations of punctuation, we also see the capitalization of the word blessed and the word Lord in the King James Version, whereas the others do not necessarily capitalize these words. Emphasis on the word blessed, which is shout as a capital letters are used. So, and emphasis on the word Lord, which obviously emphasizes the rank and importance. The Lord is blessed, therefore follows we should follow his example to also be blessed. Two forms of punctuation acceptable, however, need to analyse whether there is a change in the meaning to the sentence, what is actually meant, what it is implied. Okay. Atmosphere and emphatic statement. Poetic, it's poetic stroke caution. Its emphatic statements are verse 5, therefore, and verse 6, for. Literary form, as we said, it's poetry, a lot of figurative terms used to illustrate visually the meaning. Words like walk, stand, sits, and similes like a tree and like a chaff. General structure, verse 1, what the righteous are not. Verse 2, what the righteous love. Verse 3, use of simile, like a tree, describes the righteous. Verse 4 is like a chaff, which is describing the unrighteous. Verse 5, rewards of the unrighteous. Verse 6, rewards of the righteous. Emphasis placed on being righteous. Favour with God means protected by God. Given blessings, prosperity, longevity, long term. Wicked, insignificant, ignored by God in that he is not obligated to protect them. No blessings. Short-lived, short-term. Verse 1 to 3 talks about the blessed man. Verse 4 to 5 talks about the wicked man. And verse 6 talks about their rewards. Okay, so that's the general structure. Okay. So generally, back to the punctuation, it doesn't change or alter the meaning of the overall sentence. However, it reads better in the English Standard Version because the second verse doesn't stand on its own. It relates to the first verse. It is dependent on what elements are in the first verse. Okay. Use of questions in the passage. There were no questions in Psalm 1. Okay. There were several questions I felt moved to ask to inquire further as to the meaning of the passage. Potential answers I suggested through wrestling with meanings, and that's what I'm going to now illustrate with you. Question 1, why in verse 1, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked? And what is the meaning of this verse? Choose to speak with evil people about matters concerning their life. Evil people equals people who are not in a position to advise them correctly. As a result, they take incorrect advice about righteousness, and matters concerning their lives result in negative failure, unrighteousness. Okay, stands in the way of sinners. To stand equals be in agreement, think like, adopt an attitude of a sinner. Break the laws of God, going against God, this thus becoming unrighteous, illegal in the sight of God. Nor sits in the seat of scoffers. To be in harmony with happy, enjoying, talking negatively about others. What you speak about becomes your reality. If you don't speak positively about people, you are pulling them down, not building them up. God's plan is for us to prosper. By speaking blessings to others, you receive blessings. Speaking negative deters blessings. That's positive outcome. And as a result, positive outcomes. Verse 2. Why the use of the connective but? He's delighted in the law of the Lord. Contrast what we know a blessed person doesn't do or enjoy to what they focus on and delight in. Meaning of this verse confirms previous assumption to be against the law is to be against God. Now we have a person who delights in the laws of God and meditates on it. Can go back to the definition of that word. Focus on meditating on the laws of God day and night. What your major focus will dictate the way you walk, result in you will not walk in the way of the wicked. The result is you will not walk in the way of the wicked. So but symbolises a promise, a hope, confidence in God's faithfulness, his statutes, his laws. Verse 3. Why use a simile like a tree? Similes aid to visually impact the receiver to gain a better understanding of what is meant by the transmitter of the information. They aid memory recall of information. Use of this specific simile, like a tree, refers to a tree's stability, identity as a perennial, long-term plant, strength, establishment, symbolize. Then the verse goes on further, planted by streams of water, essentially established near a source of life, essential provisions required for survival, mainly spiritual ones. Tested in God, because you can be around people who do not build you up, but you have God. All you need as a result yields its fruit in its season. Produce fruit, other words prove you have been focusing on good and productive things. Evidence provided through the fruit beared. Fruit is making more of what God has provided you with and sharing it with others. And its leaf does not wither. Constantly maintains his resources, replenished because he remains in constant communication with God. All that he does, he prospers. What does this mean? Everything he does with the attitude of God. We know God never fails. Even in the worst of situation, God prevails and turns it for the good. John 1 verse 3. All things are made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. To acknowledge God in all your ways, as is the case of a righteous person, it would therefore follow prosperity is sure to follow. Time element is a faith indicator. The longer you wait, the longer your faith will be tested. It would be a quality like patience necessary for this waiting period. God's timing is not always in line with ours. Test of a truly righteous person will be in his faith in God. God is not on trial here. We are. God has proved his faithfulness. We know God's character. We have this revealed throughout the Bible. He is the same yesterday as he is today and will be tomorrow. What does it mean to acknowledge God in all our ways? You can start by looking at God's laws and commandments. Okay. So what are his laws and commandments? Well, the commandments are a summary of and just a guideline of what are his laws. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything in heaven, earth, or water. Do not bow down to them. Okay. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Honour your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbours. You shall not covet your neighbour's house. Look, for example, in the Bible where people have offended God and God's response. Also when people have pleased God and God's response. The only way you can do this is to read and study the stories of the Bible. Okay. Verse 4. The wicked are not so. What is the meaning of this verse? They have no foundation, no solid beliefs, can be easily driven by circumstances, unstable, fickleness, infidelity, not loyal or stable or reliable. I think it is, or being loyal to anything, or not able to be loyal to anything. Therefore, what does this mean? Reference to the verse 5. Therefore, what does this mean? Therefore, reference to the last day when Jesus returns to take account and judge the righteous and unrighteous. They will not pass the inquisition at trial before the Lord. Lower level, what you do daily reflects in your long-term productivity. If you were accused of something, would your defence hold up in a court of law? Does your actions illustrate proof of what you have been working towards? I recall a reality check when I was called for jury service when I worked for SmithKline in my year out in industry. I remember I had 2 weeks when I had to sit on a panel trying the case of a armed robbery. Okay, it was an eye-opener. The defense lawyer had to present the character of the accused, his actions, what he does on a daily basis, where he was at the time of the crime, and it had to refute and rebut evidence brought against the defendant. I developed a sharp awareness that everything you do was to be accounted for. It can lead you into hell or heaven. You constantly have to justify yourself, your actions, keep yourself in check, guard your mind, goals, reasons, and make sure that they are in line with godliness. Is it going to harm or hinder the kingdom of God? Sinners will not stand in the congregation of the righteous. It follows that a separation will occur. Another question that arises is there is a distinction between sinners and wicked people. Logically, and if you used set theory, it will suggest that that statement implies there is an intersection or mutually inclusive group of the two scenarios. And what I mean by that is, say you've got, I've explained it in set theory, and I've actually done it in a diagram, and it'd be best for you if you actually saw this, so please do look out for the notes. But if you had, say, a group all A, say for instance, people, all A is a certain group, wicked, say, and B's are sinners, right? All people who are A but not B, so all people who are wicked but not sinners, okay? And all people that are A but not B, so that's exclusively, so not all people that are, okay, this is confusing, right? But there is an intersection. I've drawn it in a form of a diagram to actually show what I mean. It's more of a visual thing to explain what I mean. So it's a bit hard for me to actually say this, but yeah. Set theory is used very often for logical reasoning. Okay, sets, as in it's usually done with using Venn diagrams. Okay, Venn diagrams are circles. Okay, and when a circle is drawn, it's a concept, it's an idea. Okay, for instance, we said that represents wicked people, A, and another circle, B, represents, say, sinners. And when you bring the two circles together and there's a part where they intersect, that's where both are exactly wicked and sinners. They're both exactly the same. And the mutually exclusive would be the areas which excluded the other, be it a sinner or wicked. Okay. I will explain this a bit better in the notes, but that's just the beginning of what I'm actually going to bring you into. Okay. I wish I could take the credit for this discovery, but it originally sprung to mind through a discussion I had with one of my Bible tutors or leaders, and it did spark then, but then I've gone into this further and it's come up in this particular psalm, and I just thought I'd illustrate this. For instance, an example in the Bible of, say, a wicked person would be Judas Iscariot. An example of a sinner would be Peter. Judas plotted against Jesus. He betrayed him outright. Judas changed his mind at the end. His testimony never stood up. Okay. So verse 1 of Psalm 1 would be what Judas did there when he plotted against Jesus. He betrayed him outright. Verse 4, Judas changed his mind at the end. His testimony never stood up. Verse 5 of Psalm 1, Judas' testimony is a result which never stood up at the trial. Okay, right? And verse 6, Judas committed suicide. Okay, that's an example. Okay, Peter now, Matthew chapter 26, verse 58. Following at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest, okay, and Mark 5:4, okay, he sat with the guards warming himself. He stood in agreement with them when he denied Jesus, okay. So this is an example of a sinner, okay. Identify as saints that there is going to come a time when we will experience fear in our stand for Jesus, but we are not to follow Peter's example, but to preach Christ until death. Stay loyal to him, defend him. We must pray for help from God for when that time comes. Strength to endure. I'd like to give you some homework at this point. Find in the Old Testament a person which is an example of a Judas, Peter, Jesus, Paul. Explaining logically, unrefutably, how you arrived at this conclusion. Okay, that's your homework. Verse 6, 4. Why the use of the word for in verse 6? Why the use of this connective? What is meant by the phrase knows the way of the righteous? To introduce the reason on for verse 5 treatment of the righteous and the unrighteous. To know the way of the righteous is to guard their ways, protection, be in agreement, support what they do, in contrast to the unrighteous, wicked, not support them, result in perish, death, because life only exists in them. Okay. So let's compare translations in Psalm 1. Okay. We look at the various translations from the English Standard Version, the NIV and the King James, and the Amplified. Okay, happy, fortunate, prosperous, and enviable, Amplified. Who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, English Standard Version. He does not walk. Does not walk. NIV, that walketh not. King James Version, who walks not, lives not in the counsel of the ungodly, Amplified. Following their advice, their plans and purposes. Okay. Nor stands in the way of sinners, ESV. Or stands in the way of sinners, NIV. Nor standeth, King James Version. Stands, nor stands, submissive and inactive in the path where sinners walk, as the Amplified. So you can actually see how each Bible serves its purpose. The Amplified goes into depth to explain each word in brackets to define a bit more. It amplifies and emphasizes, hence why it's called the Amplified Bible. King James Version's obviously using Old English, but each uses its own way of emphasizing or illustrating meaning. We see that the word scoffers is used in the English Standard Version. In the NIV, mockers is considered identical to word scoffers, and scornful in King James Version. Okay, we notice that that in verse 2, there is a distinction between a semicolon and a full stop to connect verse 1 to verse 2. And we already went through what the meanings of semicolons and full stops symbolize, and we said generally it doesn't affect the meaning overall because verse 1, verse 2 is obviously connected in a sense, and it's implied. Okay, I've also got other comparisons which I said I will type them out and you will get them in the notes, and it will be for you to observe. Okay. my comparisons, comparing cross references. Okay, now verse 1, we can also find it relates to Proverbs chapter 4 verse 14. Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not walk in the way of the evil. Okay, so they're very much connected. In Jeremiah chapter 15 verse 17, I did not sit in the company of revelers, nor did I rejoice. I sat alone because your hand was upon me, for you had filled me with indignation. So that's where you get a righteous man, so filled and rooted in the word of God. Literally taking action is an example of a righteous man. Verse 2, Psalm 119, verse 16 and 35. I will delight in your statutes. I will not forget your word. Lead me in the path of your commandments, for I delight in it. And that's 35. And Psalm 119 again, verse 1. Blessed are those whose ways are blameless, who walk in the law of the Lord. And Joshua 1:8. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have a good success. Okay, and you get various cross references leading through all the verses. Verse 3, Jeremiah 17:7-8. Okay. Again, this is available in the notes, which I'll be making available on the next newsletter. Okay. Right. More cross references. Okay. Okay. Summary of my findings. Okay, because we've just done all the observations, so that's the end of all the observations. 4 essential words: law, judgment, blessed, and perish. These are the ones I extracted. Emphasis is placed on the righteous. The unrighteous is given little credence. Almost sense grammatically a capital letter for the righteous and a lower case for the unrighteous. Focus is placed on righteousness. What you focus on is an indication of the fruit you shall produce. Can see from 6 short verses of Psalm 1, there has been a lot of observations made. You'll see. I hope I haven't given you a sense of, oh, she's covered Psalm 1, because I believe I've not exhausted the full study of Psalm 1. I mean, I found that within Psalm 1, there are lots of individual topics to be further investigated. For instance, God's laws. We know in the Old Testament this was summarized as the 10 Commandments. But each commandment in turn needs review, analysis, and definition. It is only when we examine closely what we become, that we become wise, gain knowledge and understanding by doing. Experiencing, interpretation, Thus we know what pleases God and constitutes righteousness, being right with God. So I pray I have ignited your passion to study this psalm further. It holds lots of hidden treasures and keys to developing a relationship with God, pleasing Him, and life information on relationships. Okay. To conclude, I'd like to just go through the Bible commentary and just read what it says about Psalm 1. So let's see. So back to this Bible commentary. Okay, I'm just going to quickly read. There's also a commentary here in the actual study Bible itself, but there's two commentaries. Okay, first of all, I'll take it from the Bible. I think first of all to say what it says about Psalm 1, so you get to see how on the mark I've been or off the mark I've been. It says Psalm 1. The first psalm serves as the gateway into the entire book of Psalms, stressing that those who would worship God genuinely must embrace His law or Torah, i.e. His covenant instruction. His psalm takes topics found in wisdom, literature such as Proverbs, and makes them the subject of songs of song. The purpose is that those who sing the psalm will own its values, namely, they will want more and more to be people who love the Torah, who believe it, who see themselves as the heirs and stewards of its story, of redemption and hope, and who seek to carry out its moral requirements. They can delight in the idea of being among the righteous, feeling that nothing can compare with such blessedness. By its sustained contrast, the psalm reminds readers that in the end there are really only two ways to live. Contrasting sources of values. The truly happy person guides his life by God's instruction rather than by the advice of those who reject that instruction. The truly blessed, the truly happy person is happy because God showers him with favour. Jesus uses the Greek equivalent in Matthew 5:3-11. Also compare James 1:12. The Latin translation, beatus, is the source of the word beatitude. The man, a specific godly individual, is held up as an example for others to imitate. Such teaching by use of a concrete example is common in Old Testament wisdom, literature. Wicked sinners, scoffers, these are people even within Israel who refuse to live by the covenant. The godly person refuses to follow the moral orientation of such people's lifestyle. Some have seen an increasingly level of sinfulness in the terms wicked sinners, scoffers, together with an increasing loyalty in the metaphors walk, stand, sit. However, it is likely that the terms wicked and sinner here are equivalent, while a scoffer is certainly more committed to evil. Right, so they picked up that as well, about the difference and in the two. The law of the Lord, as ESV footnote indicates, this could be taken as God's instruction, which often designates the law of Moses, the Torah, okay, particularly as he speaks in his covenant. For this reason, no one should ever think about such a person receives his blessings by deserving it, since the covenant is found on God's grace, meditates, describes an active pondering, perhaps even muttering to oneself in pursuit of insight. Some suppose day and night speaks of the work of professional scholars who spend all their time pondering the words of the law. But in view of the similar instruction in Joshua 1:8, readers should see this as setting the ideal of facing every situation, be it ever so mundane, with a view to pleasing the Lord by knowing and following his word. Contrasting fruitfulness. Here are two similes based on agriculture in ancient Palestine, describing the effects of the two kinds of people. The first image is that of a tree in a dry climate, which nevertheless thrives because of its constant supply of water. A tree bears fruit not for itself, but for others. Thus, when the faithful prospers, it is not for himself, nor is the prospering even necessarily material, but it succeeds in bringing benefit to others. See Jeremiah 17:8 for the same image. Yes. Wicked, chaff. This is the husks and straw removed by threshing, and it is lighter than the edible kernels. When a farmer tosses threshed wheat into the ear, the wind drives away the chaff. Those who reject God's covenant are like chaff in that they bring no benefits to anyone. 1:5-6, contrasting the outcomes of their lives. These two verses lead readers to reflect on where these two kinds of life are headed, showing that God will make the contrast last forever. Therefore indicates that these verses are the conclusion of the psalm, judgment. This could be any particular judgment that falls on the wicked in this life, but it is more likely the final judgment, which allows some to enter the congregation of the righteous, while excluding others. Knows. Must be something stronger than simply knows about, since God knows about the wicked and their deepest secrets. Some have argued that the word means cares for, but it is better to take this as knows with affection and approval. Will perish, that is, end in destruction. Okay, so that was a Bible commentary in terms of from the actual Bible itself. Now, if we want to go a bit more about the background, the historical background, with respect to the Psalms 1, we're now going to go to the actual Bible commentary book. And in it, it says, let me just find Psalm 1. Okay. It says the Psalms, introduction of problems of interpretation. So first of all, it's gonna just generally tell you about Psalms and studying it. Interpretation of the Psalms is not simple. This will surprise many people, for some of the Psalms are the best loved parts of the Old Testament. Poetry in every language, however, is less easily understood than prose. The formalised structure, the use of rare words, the many metaphors and other figures of speech all contribute to the difficulty. The problems are increased when the language is not one's mother tongue, and it is not possible to be immediately aware of overtones of emotion and fine nuances of meaning in words and phrases. With the Psalms, these difficulties become even more severe because of the nature of the Hebrew language and the forms of Hebrew poetry. If several English translations of the Psalms are compared, differences sometimes quite startling will quickly be found, and the reader may well wonder how learned scholars can arrive at such different interpretations of the meaning. Okay. A bit about the history of interpretation. Over the centuries, the way Christians have used, studied, interpreted the Psalms have changed. Okay. Prophecy. The first Christians regarded the Psalms as prophecy and searched for phrases and verses which told events in the life of Jesus. This can be seen in the New Testament itself. Indeed, some scholars have suggested that the Passion narrative has been moulded by reference particularly to Psalm 22 and 69. Okay. Historical interpretation. These approaches existed alongside historical interpretations, and one of the senses which Scripture was believed to possess was historical, even when greater value was placed upon the other interpretations. Attempts at providing historical occasions for the creation of the Psalms, often the life of David, can be seen in the headings of many of them. Now, with respect to Psalm 1 itself, what does it actually say? Okay. Commentary on Psalm 1. The first two Psalms lack titles, which is unusual in Book 1 of the Psalter, and it's probable that they provide an introduction to the whole book of Psalms. Whether they originally formed a single psalm is very doubtful. However, in spite of an ancient Jewish saying, the first psalm begins and ends with a beatitude. A few manuscripts of Acts 13:33 refers to Psalm 2 as the first psalm, which suggests that among some Christians either the two psalms were combined or they knew of texts which began with the present Psalm 2. Certainly it seems likely that Psalm 1 was placed here after Book 1 or the entire Psalter was completed. It is similar to Psalm 19, 7, 14 and 119 in its delight in the law, and probably is post-exilic. Whether it is currently termed a wisdom psalm and whether it was intended for use in a cult are both uncertain. Perhaps it is best understood as a poem to encourage faithfulness to the religion of the Torah. Although often described as the two ways, its tone is set by the initial happy are those. The poet is convinced that the way of goodness is an attractive way, and it would be wrong to regard it as presenting a moralistic religion in which goodness is pursued for reward. The structure is clear. Verse 1 to 3 describe the righteous closing with simile of a tree planted beside an irrigation canal, a comparison found in ancient Egypt and in pictures from the ancient Middle East. Although the phrases in verse 1 might ascend to a climax, walk, stand, sit, wicked sinners, scoffers. There may be simple poetic parallels. If the psalm is post-exilic, the reference to the law may be to the written Pentateuch. The picture is of the pious reader, speaking the words of the law half aloud until they become part of his being, rather than of silent and passive meditation. The point of the three simile is that it flourishes, not that the fruit is a reward, despite the last line of verse 3, which speaks of the prosperity of the good man. The wicked are described more briefly in verse 4 to 5. The godly man is described in detail. The side glance at the wicked is but to light up the blessing of his life by contrast. The picture is of winnowing the corn, throwing it up into the air after it has been threshed by a flail or a threshing sledge, so that the wind will blow away the straw and the husks and allow the heavier grains to fall to the ground. Verse 5 is uncertain. Most translations render the verbs as futures, although they do not differ from the form of many of the verbs, either in the psalm implying that the judgment is a future judgment by God. Some early Christian commentators saw a reference to the resurrection by translating the verb as rise up, perhaps influenced by the LXX. Since the general Old Testament belief was that the dead went to Sheol and remained there, this is unlikely unless the psalm were very late indeed. Okay, the reference appears to be to day-by-day judgments, either by the elders in the gate or possibly by God himself, and continues the description of the two types of people. This would form a better parallel to two sinners in the congregation of the righteous. The verb translated watches over, verse 6 is knows, the sense of takes care of. Other psalmists and the writer of Job will have to question whether life is always as simple as this. That concludes this Bible study simulation. I hope I have whet your appetite, but I suggest you go over it again. You certainly look at the Bible tools that I recommended, because you will need them to progress further with the Bible study course that I'm actually going to do on Facebook. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the Bible study. Thank you.